The X-Men just survived a cosmic god in issue number 11, but their next threat is much more personal. For the first time ever, we see Professor X absolutely terrified. As an invisible force systematically destroys the mansion's defenses, Charles Xavier is forced to reveal a dark family secret he's kept hidden for years. He has a brother, and he's coming to finish a decades-old grudge. This is the debut of Cain Marko, the unstoppable Juggernaut. Yes, hello, and welcome to the channel, where today we're going to be talking about X-Men issue 12 and the almost indescribable menace of the Juggernaut, plus the origin of Professor X. And here we have the various cast members of the X-Men, all in various states of disarray. I mean, they all look like they're in trouble here, especially these three, Jean, Charles, and Bobby. They all look quite scared about what's happening. You've got this explosive entrance from Juggernaut, who we only see from behind, which creates a little bit of intrigue. Just who is this Juggernaut? So let's not waste any time and get straight into the issue. So this first page here, it follows on straight from the panel on the end of the last issue, which is when Cerebro here detected maybe the most dangerous threat yet. Every issue so far has promised us the most dangerous foe yet, but this just might be true this time. So you can see here that this Cerebro machine is not how we would imagine Cerebro in today, but back then this is what Cerebro was. It's making this horrible noise, and you've got Angel back here, and he's holding his ears. It's making this really horrible noise. Bobby slides in here. I always love it when that happens. And you've got Scott here saying, stay out. None of you are meant to know about Cerebro. And Charles says, don't worry about it. We need their help. It's all about to kick off. We're about to face our most deadly threat. And you've got a couple of cool bits down here. So the guys who are making the comics, you've got this stupefying story and spectacular layout. So it's just really, you don't see that very often. I like it though. And then they tell us we've got a sizzling tale to tell. No time to waste in a long introduction. Let's go. So let's go. So this is a real quick page. It all happens very fast. So Charles says, if it's who I think it is, we better act quick. And that just sort of adds to a little bit of mystery. Well, who is this that Charles thinks it is, and why does he know it is who it is? If that makes sense. Maybe that doesn't make sense. But he clearly knows something the other guys don't, and it's remarked here that he never acted like this with Magneto. This must be especially dangerous this time. So they set about creating some defenses. So Bobby's making this big ice wall, while Scott looks like he's making some trenches around the outside. So they're preparing for an onslaught, aren't they? It's almost like a sort of siege mentality. So let's continue on. Great little page here. I like this one. So you've got Beast here. He's rolling some cable. We always talk about this, don't we, where these showcase powers early on. So new readers pick up quickly what's happening, who's who, and what's going on. So Beast is, unnecessarily, I would always say, using his power to lay this cable like this. Jean's using her powers to get some leaves on there, and you still got Cyclops zapping around. You got Angel using his wings. And we don't see Bobby doing anything on this page, but by the time this page is done, you can see everyone's used their powers. If you're a new reader, these guys have got powers. These are what the powers are. Boom. So the X-Men finished, they come inside, we're all done, and it's time for you to learn the truth. I always love it when they end these pages on cliffhangers, but he says, is this one of the most evil mutants you fought in the past, sir? No, this is my own brother, your brother. And it's like another EastEnders, dun, dun, dun. I mean, this is like something straight out of a soap opera, so let's carry on. So start laying the groundwork here for the backstory between Juggernaut and Charles. So it's told that there was a blast, an atomic blast, no less, and it actually kills Xavier's father. And it looks like his friend here, his colleague, Dr. Marko, was present, could have saved his life. Perhaps it's suggested by Charles that he's not on the level, but he's playing the comforting friend. He puts his arm around Mrs. Xavier, and it looks here, like down here, looking like they're very close. You can mean without the word. I love it when it does this. So take those words away. You can sort of see what's happening here, can't you? That he's going to be swooping in there. And Charles looks like he's got his suspicions here. So it looks like he's not a mind reader just yet, but look at his furrowed brow here. He's deeply suspicious. And blonde hair as well. I suppose I never really thought about Charles with hair, apart from the movies. Charles being blonde is throwing me for a loop. I can't lie. And now, lightning speed, the next page, it takes us through a series of events very quickly. It doesn't beat around the bush. There's no subtlety whatsoever. You see here that Dr. Marko is very much thinking, yeah, this is great. This is exactly what I wanted. This was my plan all along. And Charles can sort of sense that, can't he? So he knows the game now. The marriage looks like it's on the rails. Again, no subtlety. She says, you wanted the money, didn't you? And he says, yeah, this is the only reason I really cared. Obviously, things don't play out quite that simply in real life, but for the sake of the page, in a single panel with as few words as possible, boom, this is what's happening. But fear not, my son's coming here tomorrow. Son turns up, he's instantly a jackass. I mean, I've never met anyone who introduced themselves this way, but then again, I've never met anyone like Juggernaut, have I? So who knows? But they, again, don't beat around the bush, instantly sort of swipes at Charles, sets himself up to be a villain. And he's got that hard face about him, hasn't he? He's got a hard look. And instantly we can say, right, this guy's a jerk. So Charles goes on to explain that he didn't have superpowers back then, but, something's happened since. And you know what this page reminded me of? It reminded me of Jaws. So we haven't seen Juggernaut yet, but we're sort of hearing him in the background. We're seeing and also reading about the destruction he's causing. We haven't actually in this comic really caught sight of him yet, have we, in his Juggernaut form? But it's sort of that and as it's, you're seeing all this destruction that's being caused by Juggernaut, but we haven't yet seen him, and it's a really effective way. I mean, this was written long before Jaws came out, so it's a great use of sort of the monster trope before it was a trope. And I know exactly what Juggernaut looks like, but I can feel in myself. I'm like excited to see who is this guy, what is causing all this drama, why is Xavier so scared? And to continue with that trope, he blasts through the ice. It's remarked earlier that they're really surprised he's been able to break through so easily. It was his thickest ice. And you see this sort of silhouette of a man. So that's almost a bit like the fin coming out of the water for the shark. So we're still not seeing the monster yet, but he promises a lot, doesn't he? Scott wants to rush him and take the fight to him, and Xavier's like, no, hang back. And this gives me a chance to tell you a bit more about him. And it goes back to another flashback. And I've got to be honest, so far, I'm really enjoying this issue. I might say it's maybe one of my most favourite ones so far. It's really working for me, this back and forth. I normally hate when shows and comics and things do that, but I think this is working fantastically so far in this issue. So we cut back to the past. It turns out that Xavier's mother has died, unfortunately, and all the money has gone to Dr. Marko. And Charles won't see a penny of that until he's come of age. And it's down here that Cain accuses his father of causing the accident or being sort of responsible for Charles's father's death. So he says, you dare accuse me? I'm still not sure if he has or not yet. I'm hoping the next page will reveal that. So another fascinating portion of the story here. So as you're reading these panels, you're still not quite sure. It sounds like he might have been responsible, but he's flat out denying it. And Charles bursts in and says, I heard everything. And he's still sort of protesting in his innocence up here, but I'm not convinced at this point in this panel. And Cain starts kicking off and he causes a big accident. There's a splat and an explosion. And it looks like it might have killed Charles and Cain if it wasn't for Dr. Marko, who selflessly, although fatally injured himself, carries the two of them out. And with his dying breath, he admits that he might have been able to save Charles's father, but we won't know for sure, but that is an admission of guilt, isn't it? So we'll take it that he might have been able to save him, probably could have, judging from that. But he says, beware of Cain when he finds out about your power. Power? Now, is he talking about Charles's power? Or is he talking about Cain's? Interesting. So cut back to the present. Juggernaut's made his way to the second line of defense. It looks like he's overcoming it. You've got this bright light. And again, look, we've got this monster silhouette here. And we see his hands for the first time. So it's that first sort of visual of what he actually looks like. And it's almost like seeing the eye of the shark up close for the first time. So you're not seeing the whole shark, just a small bit. And that's basically what it's doing here. It's almost like you could play this along with Jaws to the side. And it's very, very similar in that regard. I'm not saying one copy, I'm not saying Jaws would have taken any influence from this at all. I'm sure it's been done many times, but it just works so well and help but be reminded of that film as I'm going along. It looks like that defense is holding him for now, and it gives Charles just enough time to return back to the story. So it sounds like by the end of this tale, the X-Men may have a clue as to how to defeat Juggernaut, but he's sort of just alluding to the fact that you hear me out and then you might be able to get something from it at the end. But he cuts back to the past, and we have this interesting panel up here where he muses that because of his parents' exposure to the atom bomb, that perhaps that gave him his powers. I'm interested to hear, I'm thinking of Benjamin Kellogg, if you can comment and let me know, or if anyone else knows. I've always been a little bit confused about, the Children of the Atom thing. Are they suggesting without these atom bombs that the X-Men wouldn't have come into existence? I guess that's what the angle they're coming at from it now in the 60s. And that's very much the age of the atom, isn't it? It's very much in the forefront of everyone's mind at that point. As a fan from modern times, I always thought that even without the atom bombs, there would be mutants. Thinking about Apocalypse, and I mean, I guess I've got the power of hindsight, but I've never been quite sure what the direct relation is. Is it something that's retconned later, or is it in fact true that the atom bomb accelerated the amount of mutants that would come into the world? That might be my guess, but I'm interested to know what people's thoughts are. But as the page continues, we see Charles's accomplishments. He says that the only outward sign of his power growing is his hair starts falling out. I mean, I've known that to happen to many young men, so they weren't psychics for sure. But his accomplishments grow, and this is a nice sort of glimpse into it's not just the trauma and what it is with Cain. This is a nice glimpse into Charles's past and his childhood, and he's winning lots of awards, and Cain becomes very jealous. Cain finally snaps. He's been waiting for an excuse to trash the trophies and beat Charles up, but Charles can read his every move, and Cain's got no chance really. So Charles says he doesn't want to hurt him, but by the end of the little scrap, he looks like he does a little karate chop to the back of the neck, and this little speech bubble here tells me that he's knocked out, or at least drowsy enough for Charles to get away. Here they discuss Charles's X-power, his mutant power, and Charles says that it's because of the power that tragedy hit them both, and you just have to let me finish the story to find out why. So we cut back to the past, and Charles gets it for some reason after that previous... You'd have thought it'd be over after that last page. I wouldn't have had anything else to do with him, but gets in a car with him so he can drive him to college. And this is where you sort of have to go with the story a little bit, because couldn't Charles have read his mind to know that he was up to no good? Maybe just didn't read it, or he's not at his full peak of his powers yet, so I'll let it go. But it was something I thought about as I was reading through. But in any case, they're driving along, and Cain says he's jealous of him and he hates him, basically. And he looks to drive the car off the cliff. So you drive off this cliff here, and Cain jumps out, and Charles says here, he makes sure with his mind that Cain lands safely at the detriment to himself, because I'm getting the impression here, if he hadn't have done that, he'd have been able to get out safely, but he doesn't, and he tumbles over the cliff in this wrecked car. And almost like they're reading the minds of the reader, one of the X-Men asks, is that how you lost the power to your legs? Is that why you can't walk? And he says, no, that's something that happened with Lucifer. Now, we know that from X-Men 9 with the Avengers, but he continues on with the story. It's nice that they address that, because a lot of people might be thinking that in that moment who hadn't read that issue. So it's nice that they just circled back to that and made sure everyone knew that wasn't the case. But he says he manages to survive the crash by harnessing his brain power to its fullest extent by creating a mental shield around his body. Not sure how that works exactly, because I don't know that his brain can create something physical on the outside. I don't know how that works exactly. If anyone can comment and let me know if I'm missing anything, but that seems like something that's a little bit more than he can do in modern day, I should say. It's not anything that I don't understand how that's working exactly, but I'm open to being corrected if that's wrong. But Juggernaut breaks through, gets to the next line of defense, and the silhouette is a little bit more defined now. We can see that he's taken up more of the panel, and we can see more of his shape. And he looks enormous. Look at the size of his hands and the size of everything. He looks like a complete beast. And he gets closer, and now we see his feet, and he's just about to trip over this wire that's about to set these grenades off. And the X-Men say to themselves, if he gets through this, what could possibly stop him? And I actually don't know at this point. I don't know what's going to happen. Now, the grenades shoot out, there's sleeping gas, and they say there's enough to knock out a herd of elephants, and he starts to stagger backwards. Have they won, or have they just bought themselves enough time to hear a little bit more of the story? I think it's the latter. But Bobby creates this ice shield across the wind to stop the gas getting in, and I think that's Beast there asking, just how did he become so powerful? Because up until now, Cain just seems like a brat. How has he become this monstrous being? Hopefully, we'll find out very soon. Charles tells us that the creature outside is a far cry from Cain Marko, and he owes it to them to tell them how he got his power, and it might be the only power on Earth that can actually defeat them. It's a flashback to the Korean War, and somehow they're serving in the same unit together. How often does that happen? I don't know, but for the purposes of the story, Charles has to be there so he can recount how he got the power. But anyway, What's even more extraordinary is Cain is hiding. He's a coward, obviously. And he's hiding from the fight, and he just wanders into this cave, and he discovers something that no one else has ever discovered in the history of the Earth. He just wanders in, which is incredible by itself. But obviously, you could write pages and pages about how he's come to the cave. The editor probably says, you've got 2 panels, just make it happen. And that's probably what happens a lot of the time in comics. But he gets in there, and Charles knows all about it somehow. Wow, this is that sacred lost temple I've heard all about. Legends have warned of it for centuries, yet no one found the cave that was just there. Maybe one of the explosions opened up an entrance, who knows, whatever. Cain picks up the ruby, and there's an inscription on it. He reads it out, and by doing that, he becomes something more. He seems to start to grow here, and what's happening to me? I'm changing. And Cain Marko no longer exists, and in his place, ... Here we go. And perhaps I've been conditioned by modern comics. I expected a full page of just Juggernaut, just smashing it. But they don't do that. That's not a thing here. So Juggernaut does do that, but I expected our viewpoint to be from here and it taking up the whole page, but we don't see it from behind again. So still doing the trope. We're still not seeing Juggernaut in all his glory yet, but this action causes a cave in and all these rocks fall, and Charles gets out just in time, and he thinks to himself, wow, it will take him years to crawl out of there, and God help me when he does. And he just, I guess, gets on with his life and forms the X-Men. And a little bit of exposition for us here. So Benjamin, please help me. I don't know how to pronounce that word. Cyttorak is the most mysterious of all the deities of black magic. And he left a curse behind when he was driven out, and they left this curse of the Juggernaut. That old ancient word, of course. And they see him getting up, and they say to themselves, well, obviously nothing can stop a Juggernaut. He breaks through, and again, we see a little glimpse, still not seeing him in all his glory yet. We're not seeing his face, very cleverly covering his face with his arm. But he's breaking through, and there's just no stopping this dude, is there? Can I be honest? I think this is a stupid page. I'm not a fan of this at all. So Charles says, there's something we've forgotten. There's like a steel inner wall, and this whole page is just wasted with these fools sort of rushing to be the first one to pull it down and save the day, and they whoomp into each other, and Beast kicks them away and finally gets it. I mean, what a waste. I guess there was a quota to fill in terms of team interaction. Maybe that's why they did it, but I'm not a fan of this page. I think the story lost a little bit of momentum here, and it's just a bit of a waste. We've got 1 page 17, we've got many to go, and the story's been so good up to now. Every page has been like, you must read the next page, it's on a cliffhanger. And this just letting the chapter down. This is just letting the issue down a little bit for me at the moment, this one. So not a fan of this, to be honest, and I'm looking forward to moving on. So the steel defense goes up, and as they're sort of making their way through the mansion, they ask themselves, what's going to happen if he breaks through? And the answer is, I don't know. We're a bit out of options if that happens. But he's almost upon them, and I like how they ask these questions, if he does get through, Professor, can you stop him mentally with your powers? And the answer is no. I've not been able to read him since I got here. There's some dark magic at play, and it renders him powerless. In more modern retellings, I'm thinking probably of the movies and things. I think the helmet is what blocks it, isn't it? So is it Deadpool versus Wolverine? Wolverine versus Deadpool, whichever way around it's called, where one of the plot points is they use Juggernaut's helmet to block psychic powers. But maybe they just haven't got to that point yet, or it just isn't a thing in 1965. But in any case, it's a no-go. It's not going to work. This is going to be a physical fight, not a mental one. And you see the steel start to buckle. He's nearly breaking through. So he breaks through. They say it's almost akin to like 50 battleships worth of steel. And he smashes through, and Bobby creates this wall of ice, and he breaks through that. And that's it. There are no more defenses except for the X-Men who line up, and they're ready to take him on. And this is it, the last page of the issue. So he breaks through. Cyclops uses beam on him, but it looks like this is magic. He's sort of forced the beam away, breaks through. This is a great panel, isn't it? Just look at the shape of the man. Monstrous. And he smashes them all away like they're paper dolls, and that's it. He's through. And here we are on the last panel, Juggernaut in all his glory. I'm a bit sort of ruined by the modern sort of take on Juggernaut. I was expecting it to be bigger and sort of more muscly or something. So if I'll find an image of a more modern day Juggernaut, and we've sort of been spoiled, haven't we, in modern day with some of these modern renditions, but this is the first ever appearance of Juggernaut, and he does look like a tank. I mean, they've not had any character quite like this, have they? So they've had Blob and a few other characters who had physical strength and attributes, but this is being presented as the most physically dominant threat so far. And it's left on this cliffhanger, and he's got poor Charles got nowhere to go. His mental powers aren't working. He's at Cain's mercy. What is going to happen next? What we are promised is one of the greatest battles of all time, as the irresistible Juggernaut battles the unconquerable X-Men to the bitter end. So I think they're sort of saying it's an unstoppable force meets an immovable object almost. You must not miss it. And here we are. We take a quick sneak peek at issue 13, which is going to continue that story. So we see Juggernaut from behind again, almost reminiscent of the previous issue where he was sort of holding a similar pose. But this time the X-Men don't look as scared and beaten, do they? So they're sort of taking the fight to Juggernaut. And it looks like they've got some help. Who is that? Is that Johnny Storm of the Fantastic Four? I don't know. I guess I would say so. But I don't know till I read it. But it promises to be very good. And I will say, actually, I think that was the best issue of X-Men so far. So we've had the Namor issue, which was really good, and the ones with Wanda and Pietro, so the Brotherhood, I enjoyed those ones very much, and the one with the Avengers, of course, all great. But this was the first issue for me that just clicks so well, and as you read in the page, the story, it's the construction of it, and got the flashbacks, and it comes back to modern day, and like I say, that sort of Jaws-like trope, monster trope of him finally being revealed on the last page. It all worked for me. I loved it. I thought that was such a great issue. And I am actually genuinely really excited to read issue 13. So please like and subscribe. Join us for that. I can't wait to read it. I hope you can't wait to watch it with me. And I'll catch you on the next video. Thanks for watching.